We're out to do our formal hearing.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the regular city commission meeting of December 16th, 2025 to order and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Steinhardt.
Present.
Commissioner Elder.
Present.
Commissioner Rozelle.
Present.
Commissioner Olsman is excused. Mayor Paul present. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the consent agenda?
So move. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications, there were no communications. And I do not see any elected officials in the room, so we'll move right to public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to make a statement on an item that is not on the agenda. Please come forward to the microphone.
Hello, Susan Considine, 12727 LaSalle. Mr. Zalewski came to our planning commission meeting I was hoping for a presentation on stormwater, but it was more question and answer. And so there's important points I wanted to bring up. And I've been told to be careful what I say, so I'm going to try and quote people as much as possible. The downspout thing is a particular problem, certainly if you've got something that's being built not to the specifications of the site plan, the final approved building plans, that's incumbent upon the inspector to flag it and have the correction. But if it's already passed inspection and something's added afterward, or the downspouts are turned around, particularly if they're in the backyard, well, we can't just waltz in and look. So I just want to bring up, we continue to talk about which way the downspouts are turned, and we're counting on you, the attorney, to educate people on 6-59, which also mentions it's not just where it's turned, but where the water's permitted to flow. Also, I want to bring to your attention, I've been watching enough of the site plans coming through. There's inconsistencies in the way downspouts are marked. Sometimes it's an X, sometimes it's a DS, sometimes it's a black circle, or sometimes they're not there at all. Like one I went to a couple months ago and raised a question about where are the downspouts. And so the Planning Commission approved it under the condition that a new plan be submitted with the downspouts marked. And I'll just pass this around and you guys can tell me if you know where the downspouts are. Because I don't see them and the house is under construction. So also Hank asked, he's always telling us there's some statute of limitations. So he asked that and Mr. Zalewski said, well, one thing that has certainly helped us is that within the past couple of years, the Michigan Supreme Court has confirmed in published law that a nuisance per se, a violation of the zoning ordinance, is a continuing violation every day that it exists. Now, a lot of our ordinances have always said that, but the Supreme Court put it in writing, and there's some more. So, my point is the code doesn't just say what property owners can and can't do. It also says a lot of things about what the city is supposed to do. So my question is, if there's a failure to enforce, is that a continuing violation every day that the city fails to enforce? Every day that they can fail to investigate? And is there a greater duty on the city if some new structure or building was permitted which resulted in more water for an adjacent neighbor? If it was 20 years ago and I've been taking the garage, but a new driveway comes in and suddenly I'm flooded, does the city have a duty to investigate? Otherwise, are they complicit in this everyday continuing violation, every day that it exists? And another issue, again, it wasn't a presentation, it was more question and answer. And Mr. Zalewski said, I would like some direction as to where to focus my energies because there's so many different areas where you can concentrate on. Is it new construction? Is it existing construction? Is it downspouts? Prohibited connections is an interesting one. Anything else? ... that you'd like me to focus on, because it's a huge topic. I don't want to just be searching in the dark for what's most important to you. And I, as a taxpayer, am counting on an attorney to minimize risk for the city. So I would hope you would be proactively looking through. You also mentioned we've certainly heard plenty of public comment. Well, maybe you can look at what have people been commenting about? What are the problems? And also, you mentioned a complaint-based enforcement. So maybe you should review the complaint procedure, because I filed a complaint and then I never hear back from them, so they don't put the complaint in writing. Or when somebody else complained, we searched in the records and we found out there was a risk of flooding in a new build. And guess where the adjacent residence getting flooded? Right on the opposite side of where they said it was. So I think we could count on you to provide training to our city, and especially our admin, and over here, and also our planning commission, because they keep saying things like, we're finding instances where the as-built survey wasn't done. So then the planning commission says, hey, it's out of our hands once it leaves us. So we need some checks and balances. I would encourage you to review your site plan permit procedures, the as-built approval procedures, also your concrete permitting process, because if it's a replacement and not a new install, it's up to somebody's discretion whether it needs to be a survey with it. And I don't think it needs to be a survey, but at least you need to know where the high point is, or if the garage apron's going this way or that way. Also, there was a lot of talk about figuring out the intent of the stormwater ordinances. And I'm thinking from some of the things you told us about, I looked up the nuisance per se ordinance. The intent should be every property has to manage its own stormwater without the help of their adjacent neighbors. I also think the city should be looking to set equitable standards for how much any one property can dump into the publicly paid for sewer, because people are dumping their garages at the rear setbacks onto their driveway and trying to get their full driveway instead of trying to manage some. And the city should know how much surface area in any particular region is going to the city sewer. Right now, they don't seem to care. They don't seem to care. I also would like to encourage you to review Nowak and Frauss's drainage reviews, because they could be much more advanced. They see things like appears to be managing the property on their own water or on their own property. It should be something like measuring the roof. How much water is this displacing? How much is the driveway displacing? Drive around the city. So many garages have their downspouts at the back of their property. And like, why should any garage at the rear setback be allowed to drop in the back? So I hope we can use his services, because we're finding lots of problems. We're just going to paperwork like I showed you there. And that's just the start of it. We've got a property where they can't find the as-built survey, and it sure appears to be over the 50% lot coverage. So did that property get a ZBA variance? I guess we're going to have to FOIA that, because we don't get very nice responses. And then we ask for information from Brad Brickle. I've had a question in from 1027, and I guess he's out hunting a lot or something. But I think we've been hiring Nowak and Frauss forever. I think they could step up to the 21st century on stormwater management for us. So I have a lot more to say, but we need your help, because for corrective action and preventive action. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hello, I'm Rob Onesco. I'm here on behalf of the Huntington Woods Men's Club. I'm the president of the club, and I just want to say, this is our 50th anniversary for the Men's Club, and over that time we've had a great relationship with the city, and we want to keep that going. We know next year, being the 100th year, we want to make sure that we work closely together on anything that you guys are planning, so that we're involved. And also, being the 50th year, we are having our 50th anniversary party, and we'd like to, as pillars of the community, want to make sure that you are all invited. I have a little QR code if you all want to scan it and attend. It's January 31st, but please, we'd love it if you all were able to attend it. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move on to the normal items of business. Our first item of business is going to be a public hearing regarding the proposed 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And I think the best way to start that off with is with a presentation, and then we'll open it up to the public after that.
Sounds good, thank you. I think I've met everybody, maybe not Matthew, hi, but I'm Melissa Prouse, I'm the new Parks and Recreation Director. I think this week is my second month here, so still very much getting my feet wet, but I was really excited that this was already in process and almost complete, honestly, when I came on board. But it's been very fun to kind of help wrap it up and get it to you guys and start thinking about the next steps to carry it forward. I'm a planner by education, so this is what I really love to do. So I'm not trying to steal Jane's thunder from McKenna, but she's here also to answer questions. We're going to run through this kind of quick, so stop me if there's any questions, or I can take questions at the end, however you want to do it. All right, so we wanted to start with just a high level, what is the purpose of the 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan? It's a high level, overarching community-wide plan. It sets goals, themes, and priorities for Parks and Recreation throughout the city. It's a detailed inventory of everything we have in the city, along with an accessibility assessment of all of our parks, which is a great tool for future planning. Probably most importantly, it's required for grant eligibility. So the approval of this plan and having it on record with the DNR makes us eligible for a variety of state grant programs to hopefully in the future secure some funding for park improvements here in the city. And then we just wanted to note that this plan is not a replacement for individual park master plans or detailed park design. That's not what this is. That would be sort of the next phase of getting into more detail of the parks before we applied for grants or figured out exactly what we were going to invest in. Just a really high level grant planning timeline, just so you know kind of what we're thinking at the staff level. Hopefully the plan is approved in December by the city at this meeting today. It's due to the DNR February 1st. We would like to get that in a few weeks before that deadline, just so we're safe on that. We would spend time over the next year with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, prioritizing, hopefully doing some detailed park master planning, looking more at park design for what some of the priorities are that came out of the plan. And then we'd be looking at April of 2027 to apply for grants from the DNR, which would get us, hopefully if we're funded and we have the match funding secured, spring 2028 construction of some new grant funded projects. That's kind of the timeline of what we're shooting for in terms of grants. I threw this in, I'm not going to go through this in detail. This is something that I had at the county that we used as kind of a way to talk about the park planning process, and really just to highlight that on this sort of flow chart of the process, for most of our parks, we're all the way at still in kind of the concept plan and long-term visioning, and that there's a lot of steps to go and a lot of conversations and a lot of public engagement that will come before we, start putting things in the ground. And I threw this on because I had a really fun time going through the Facebook page for Parks and Recreation, looking for photos for this presentation. It is very clear to me, and has been since my first day, that this community very much appreciates its Parks and Recreation resources. I mean, every picture is smiling, happy families and kids. So I just threw that in just to say it is very apparent to anybody who works here or has worked on this plan that this community really does value Parks and Recreation. So high level, there's 7 goals and objectives that came out of the plan. The first one is to modernize and diversify our park infrastructure. The second one is to strengthen Parks and Recreation Department involvement, and I think this boiled down to sort of increased communication between the departments and between the staff and between the community and the staff, and I think we heard that loud and clear, and that'll be something we'll be focusing on going forward. Coordinating efficient management of facilities and amenities. When I hear that, I hear maintenance plans and routines and keeping our parks, clean and beautiful and maintained. Exploring alternative funding options, which we talked about. We'll be looking for some grant funding in the future. Expanding programming and recreation opportunities for all age groups. Looking at spaces that really are intergenerational for people to come and utilize as a family is something we heard quite a bit of. Advance environmental sustainability. I know there's a strong contingent of folks who have an interest in that in the community. So I think going forward, we'll kind of be looking at anything we do through that lens of environmental sustainability and seeing how we can, always have that in mind as we're planning and building parks in the future. And then the last one is improving accessibility and inclusivity across all the parks. We want all of our parks and spaces to be usable by everybody in the community. So something that I think has always been a goal, but just that we're highlighting here. And this was just one more note just to show that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, this plan, got a lot of really fantastic feedback, but that we did hear that the community wants to make sure that before specific investments are made, that there's more discussion, there's more conversation about what we're putting where and what people want to see as we kind of drill down. So just wanted to highlight that will be a priority for us. So I'm going to run through kind of some of the bigger parks real quick and hit some of the highlights, and then they're happy to answer any questions. For Huntington 11 Mile Park, renovating the tennis courts and the pickleball. I know a lot of folks are excited about starting to think about the community garden in a different way and figuring out how to revitalize that space a little bit. Shielding lighting, sorry about the typo there, and bike parking. Alligator Park, we heard some interest in either replacing the sandbox or maybe making it a little smaller and putting in some other small, like toddler-sized play equipment for kids to use there, so it's not just the sandbox. Accessible pathways to get to those different things. Shade came up over and over, so that's something we'll always be keeping in mind going forward. And shaded seating. And this was one of the parks, I think most of the parks people talked about pollinator or native gardens as being something they wanted to see, but that came up here. There are some beautiful gardens there already, as you know. Coolidge Elgin Park, privacy fencing came up along Coolidge just to kind of block the road a little bit from the kids playing. Accessible routes, as you know, for this park, pretty much the whole park is wood chips, so it's not super accessible for people to actually get to the play equipment. Upgrading the benches and looking at a more formalized bench dedication program was something that came up. Planting some more trees, and then looking at replacing the wood chips at some point with a more accessible surface. The recreation center, there were a lot of things that came up here. This is just kind of the highlights. Resurfacing the pool in the next couple of years is going to need to be a priority. The locker rooms have seen better days, as you can see from some of these pictures. Installing some more shade, not everywhere, but in a few places where people have said they'd like to see a little bit more shade. Resurfacing the tennis courts and maybe looking at that in terms of tennis and pickleball and how we're lining things or how we're separating things as we see pickleball just continue to increase in popularity. And then adding programming for teens, adults, and seniors, and again, improving communication about registration and scheduling, making sure that the public knows what's available and how they can register. Scotia Park, there was a lot of discussion at Scotia Park about this possibly being a good place to add some teen activities. We don't have that fully defined yet, but some things that got thrown out were lawn games, a zip line, or a climbing structure. I've seen success with like hammock parks in certain places where you kind of have hammocks up for people to hang out on in the park. That's something that teens think is cool. The concept of a naturalized amphitheater built into the lawn came up, and that's something I think that we could take a closer look at. Adding a small pavilion also came up, the pollinator and native gardens, and then maybe looking at some additional pathways through or around the park just to add a little more space for walking through the park. Men's Club Field, accessibility is a challenge here, so I think that would be a focus there. Neither of the entrances are accessible currently, so getting into the park and then to the fields would be a priority. Looking at maybe planting some perimeter shade trees, not sure how possible that is with how they use the fields, but we're going to look at that. The bleachers need to be updated. This is a place where permanent restrooms and a drinking fountain came up. And then somebody, or maybe multiple people, had the idea of maybe a mural or something on that back wall just to kind of spruce it up a little bit. Peasley Park, this was another one where privacy fencing was of interest. Updating the play structures, maybe adding some more accessible features, shade benches, restrooms, and then again replacing the wood chips with a more accessible surface. So that could be the poured in place rubber surface, or it could be the AstroTurf surface as well. Reynolds Park, we were looking at potentially updating the whole playground there, adding new play and climbing structures for kids of all ages. Looking at a shade structure there. I know there's already the pad with the picnic tables where people gather. It'd be really nice to have shade over that for rentals and gatherings. Accessible surfacing, and then the permanent restrooms. The skate park. We talked a lot about the skate park. I wasn't here for most of those conversations, but I know that this group was. I think that we're We're still looking at Val Jones and what is the best possible use for Val Jones. But some of the things that we heard that people were interested in here were looking at a sound assessment and considering installing sound panels to kind of abate some of the sound that comes from the hockey rink. Looking at permanent restrooms here, accessible pathways, possibly renovating the skate park and the hockey rink, but making sure that we're getting input from folks who know how to build those things and use those things regularly. Potentially adding some new amenities, maybe something else that kind of evens out the use of the park a little bit and gives people one more thing to do. I know the concept of like a ninja kind of obstacle course came up. That might be something interesting to consider there. And then seating and shade is always something that people want to see more of. And for the smaller parks, I didn't go through each of them, but in general, lots of like smaller amenity updates, updating the benches and the picnic tables, making sure there's bike parking everywhere, considering drinking fountains wherever we can, and just kind of updating all of that aging infrastructure and freshening up these spaces a little bit, including gardens and a maintenance plan for those gardens. And then for programs and events, some of the main things, the plan does really focus heavily on the parks, but it does talk a little bit about the recreation programs as well. We heard that folks would like to see more team-focused programming. Some of the things that came up were outdoor movie nights, again, the long games, sports, leagues, teams, and more adult and active senior programming. People wanted more activities for, when we've been talking internally about like the 40 to 60-year-old crowd, what can we do to get them into the rec center or out in the parks doing things? That's typically a challenging demographic to program for, but people would like to see programming. More intergenerational and family programming, again with the communication, making sure the website has all the information that folks need on it. And then tennis tournaments and sport leagues were ones that came up. And that's our Bob Ross painting class, which is very, very popular. So our next steps are to finalize this plan and get it submitted to the DNR by February 1st, work on some master plans and designs for some of those key parks that we might want to be investing in, prioritizing those projects for funding, applying for grants, and then hopefully investing in our parks. And that is all we have for you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Please come forward.
I just wondered what the plan does in terms of sustainability and resilience.
Yeah, it's, and Jane, feel free to chime in, but it is noted throughout. I saw lots of mention of things like permeable pavement and stormwater management, and if you can think of any details, but.
Additional permeable surfaces that were to be created, making sure that we're mindful.
I'm sorry, could you speak up?
Mindful of offsetting permeable surfaces that are
Yes.
created with
I saw nothing,
non-permeable.
I didn't see any of that in the plan. You talk about accessible surface.
It's in a few, I can,
Because we haven't seen the plan because it's not on the website of the city, so we're just looking at your slides. For some reason, it wasn't made available to us to see before this meeting. So the other question, I guess, would be, when we talk about goals and priorities, we talk about SMART goals and priorities. I didn't see any, did you?
I mean, we don't necessarily categorize them that way, but we do use this plan as a.
You will get there?
Well, we will use this plan as a tool to measure our progress.
You will have measurements? Okay, I think I understand. Thank you. God help us.
Jessica Downey, 13160 Kingston. At the August 12, 2025 Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting, a community member presented a schematic she had privately commissioned for Vale Jones Park. Her proposal included updates to the skate bowl and hockey rink, as well as the addition of a ninja-style obstacle course. At that same meeting, McKenna presented the first draft of the Parks and Rec Master Plan and stated that they could not make a clear recommendation for Vale Jones Park because community feedback was nearly divided between those advocating for a full reimagining of the park and those favoring renovation and improvement of the existing facilities. However, when the updated plan was presented in September of 2025, the recommendations had shifted significantly. The revised plan favored retaining and improving existing facilities while adding an obstacle course, virtually identical to the schematic presented by that community member at the August meeting. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board has confirmed that no additional board meetings, public input sessions, or discussions occurred to shape this decision. I have since asked McKenna, the former Parks and Rec Director, and multiple board members how this shift happened, yet no clear explanation has been provided. This lack of transparency is both concerning and frustrating. It's especially troubling that the ideas of someone who lives over a mile from the park and, to my knowledge, has only attended a single public meeting, I haven't seen her before or since, appear to have outweighed the input of residents who live adjacent to the park and experience its conditions daily. I am requesting a clear explanation of how this version of the plan for Vale Jones Park was developed, and specifically whether the privately commissioned schematic served as a framework or inspiration for the revised proposal. Although I don't expect an answer, as my questions about Vale Jones Park have consistently gone without clear, definitive answers. Additionally, the original master plan materials were incomplete in how they represented public feedback. Specifically, page 5 of the original plan highlighted community support for Vale Jones Park, but failed to acknowledge the opposition and concerns raised during multiple public meetings. This omission does not accurately reflect the public record and gives a misleading impression of consensus. I truly do not understand why Vale Jones Park has been framed as an all-or-nothing decision, either a full reimagining of the park or a simple renovation of all existing features. I believe there is a reasonable and balanced middle ground. That approach would involve renovating and improving the skate bowl to meet current safety standards in accordance with MMRMA's recommendations, while removing the hockey rink, which is long past its useful life, has consistently been the primary source of noise, litter, property damage, and contributes to most to the parking, traffic, and loitering issues, and has the most significant negative impact on nearby residents. This solution would preserve the most popular and family-friendly feature of the park, the skate bowl, while removing the feature that has increasingly become a nuisance rather than an asset, often used in ways that detract from the park's intended community purpose. I was encouraged to see that the master plan draft in tonight's agenda packet now includes consideration of repurposing all or part of the park and reiterates a commitment to community input to guide that process. I hope that commitment includes ensuring all feedback is accurately represented and weighed equally. I appreciate the effort that has gone into this process and look forward to the updates and improvements to our city. If you vote to adopt this plan tonight, I hope you do so with careful consideration of the concerns I've outlined. The future of Vale Jones Park should be shaped by transparency, fairness, and the voices of the community members who know it best. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Claire Greco, 26586 Dundee Road. I've been an adopted gardener since 1998. I was the first person to volunteer when Claire Glad started the program, so I have been gardening for the last 28 years in almost all the parks. I went on both park tours, and I gave a lot of my feedback and recommendations for each park and facility. And now that I see my picture in all these, I wish I would have dressed better. As a gardener, I'm really happy to see that much of the master plan calls for adding gardens, adding trees, and maintenance. On the strategic plan priority levels on pages 13 and 14, I'm in agreement that a feasibility study and a plan for Vale Jones State Park is a high priority, and I appreciate the fact that it's at the top of the list there. So before we spend another penny in doing any kind of renovations at all, we need to have a feasibility study and we need to have a master plan. And it needs, I have plenty of my own opinions also, but we need to talk to everybody about their opinions. And then I'm also in agreement that the 11 Mile and Huntington Woods Community Garden needs much better management and maintenance, and I'm thankful that that's at the very high, because Jessica and I went back there and looked at it. Yeah. I just want to put my plug in for Alligator Park, because I started gardening there about 2 years ago. It's kind of hard to get in there with all the construction, and then somebody shows up to do other things in there. I just want to know if we could possibly make Alligator Park maybe a little higher priority. I'm constantly being asked when when is the play structure that was removed going to be replaced? Not just by the people that are using the park, but also by the people that live around there, because I know most of the people that live there, I live right down the street. On page 43, great recommendations for the Adopt a Garden program, more clarity on the organization and what city department is responsible for the Adopt a Garden program will be very helpful to those of us that garden, because right now it is very confusing of where we have to go to get permission to do what, or sometimes I gotta talk to 2 or 3 different people to do something in a garden. But I would like to ask if we could also have recommendations for a Adopt a Bench program or the Adopt a Bench program, if we even have it. I think if more people know about the Adopt a Bench program, maybe we could get more people to pay for more benches, because that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit. On page 73, table 16, on the all parks consistent amenity designs, I would like to ask that you expand that to include uniform benches and picnic tables in all the parks. I can tell you all this later now, right now. And all the parks that are made of materials that do not require maintenance. They're made out of wood, and a lot of the benches in the parks that we saw are just falling apart. You can't even really sit on them. But if we could just make them more uniform so that they all look alike, because we have a total mishmash across the parks of a lot of different things. Maybe, I hate to say it, but plastic will maybe last longer. Uniform fencing, color, and finish for all the parks. I realize that some of the parks need different kinds of fencing, but if we could make those maybe a little more uniform. And then uniform signage for all of the parks with the name of the park and the name, City Huntington Woods name, and the logo. Because the parks have sort of mishmashes of signs, a lot of them are wood that, they were here long before I got here 40 years ago. If we could, it would be nice to have them all the same. I know there was a big discussion at Mary Kay. I gardened that entrance at the triangle there about the lighting, back and forth with the lighting. Electric was put in, and then this person said at the City Hall I couldn't do it, and then this person at the park said I could, and then it ended up being that we never lit it. So, on the action recommendations, I don't know, I would be pushing for Coolidge Elgin Park for more shade trees along Elgin Road. And Men's Club Field, accessible entrance, I would make sure that, can we kind of specify that it would have an extra path from the Lutheran Church parking lot that is just one big mud puddle every time I've had to go over there for anything, even with my kids years ago. Reynolds Park, which is probably the most popular park in the city, needs more bicycle racks. If we put more bike racks there, more people would ride, and I'm also, when they go by there, see that there are a lot of bikes just like laying all around. So. And on that action recommendations, you do have recommendations for what to do at Val Jones, but a feasibility study needs to be done first. I wouldn't even go there making anything concrete yet. So, overall, I think it's a very thorough and a well thought out plan with some really great ideas, and I'm really excited for the future of our parks, and I'm really excited for our future with Melissa. Yeah. Thank you for listening now.
Okay, so I just wanted to add a little more thing about what I last said, and then I'll get to the parks. And that's that, again, if you guys care so much about where the downspouts are turned, the way they're turned, then the plan should be marked. Because then when somebody makes a complaint, you have no frame of reference to know whether they've changed anything. You have no frame of reference for enforcement.
Can we get back to
Yeah, okay.
topic at hand here?
To sum up, is oversight reduces oversights. And so then I just wanted to say for the park, welcome to Huntington Woods, by the way. Appreciate it. Looks like you're doing a good job. And I just wanted to recommend, yes, the covered gathering spots. Also, I've heard the audio from the people who have to live near that park, and I couldn't stand it. So I'm really for finding an alternative. I mean, it was buyer beware, but, and then I just wanted to suggest to, I don't know, what's the park it's either Wareham or Hereford down that way? Either there or Reynolds Park. I was at a park somewhere in Warren, and of course much larger than any of our parks, but they had a story so you could walk get the kids to walk around the whole park, and you get one section of a storyboard, is that what they call them? Something like that would be good. And then the last thing I want to say, this is just related to when we hire these companies to come in and consult. The master plan, I brought it to your attention that there are 3 related to stormwater, and 2 of them have been, one's been high priority since at least April 28th of this year, and maybe the last 2 years. It was hard to tell. I was hoping that you guys, I had to FOIA and get a big stack of paper. Hopefully you guys got the annual report that's supposed to come out of this. So as far as I can tell, this high priority item, they still haven't figured out the threshold of square footage increase, and they haven't figured out first flush, which I was happy to hear Hank talk the other night about. You got to come up with a rain event standard. So and this is still related to you. So successful plan implementation will be directly related to committed city leadership. And it says the action plan should be revisited by the Planning Commission on an annual basis to determine what has been accomplished and review priorities. So, here, plan stays fresh and useful. Periodic reviews and amendments should be carried out by Planning Commission and City Commission. So I'm thinking if they're going to do their annual report, I'm hoping you guys are putting it on your calendar for when you would expect to see their annual report and see how things are going, because I haven't seen any action on it, and we're already that was in the 0 to 3 range for implementing the plan, and so we passed that in August for 3 years. So I like this plan, looked a little more tailored to our community, whereas this is, kind of a cut and paste the city name. But so hopefully we're going to start doing something with it, because the stormwater's a problem. And oversight reduces oversights. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elliot Luther. I live at 13160 Kingston Avenue, and I put my input in on the public input session of the master plan, and I'm just thinking for Val Jones. I'm envisioning kind of a place where me and my friends can kind of hang around, and maybe a place with, a bit more green area or a play structure of some sort. I have a sister with sensory problems and issues, and it's really hard for her sometimes with how loud the hockey pucks slamming against the backboards are, and I want to help her. I want to see her a little bit happier. I know it's hard for her, and it can sometimes be a nuisance, and the porta-johns there, they smell really bad, so a public restroom permanent would probably be a pretty good idea. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public participation and move on to item number 2. We have a motion to approve the 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move approval with a modification to the Val Jones section of the plan that I'd like to discuss in more detail under Commissioner comments when appropriate.
So I'm clear, the motion is to approve with
With a modification to the Val Jones portion.
I will second that.
Okay, would you like to start with your modifications?
Modifications, yeah. I mean, I think Ms. Downey's points are well taken in that we've heard a lot about Val Jones over the years, and whether or not its intended purpose and usefulness has run its course. I think that I take that path quite a bit along 11 Mile based on where I live. I live on Kingston, but a different section of the city, but I'm on 11 Mile a lot. And I will say that the skate bowl does get a lot of usage. I see our young people utilizing it. I see them utilizing it with young adults, their parents, etc. I think the rink is sort of a different story. I don't see as much usage of that. It's an element that over time has deteriorated. There's been safety concerns, et cetera. So I would be in favor of moving forward with the portion of the plan that speaks to renovating the skate bowl. I have no issue with that. I think, you know, your permanent restroom and all of that is all absolutely necessary and well taken. But I'd like us to take another look at the portion of the park occupied by the rink, have that removed, and then consider an alternate use there, whether it's, and I'm not familiar with this ninja type thing, you know, whatever it's referred to as, but if we could get, you know, I mean, maybe we could just, for purposes of this plan, remove the rink and place like a sort of placeholder there, and then at a future meeting after receiving public input, drill down more specifically on what we do with that portion of the park. But I'm not comfortable moving forward with both elements in there as they exist. I'm comfortable with remodeling the skate bowl. I'd like to see the rink removed and then just a placeholder for, you know, alternate recreational use or something of that nature. So that's my first comment, Mr. Mayor, on what my motion would be with a sort of modification to the plan. I did want to ask a couple of questions, and one is in regards to irrigation. So we've struggled. There's some irrigation systems, I think, that exist in the parks that are broken or maybe have been abandoned and aren't fully functional. Other parks have irrigation systems that are very limited. So I'm wondering, you know, can we get in a, and it doesn't have to be part of this, but, you know, at a future meeting, can we understand the irrigation situation, where these systems exist? Are they functional? Do they cover the entire park? Do we need to expand them? Do we need to retire them? You know, that type of thing. So I'd like us to look at that. I think the signage comment was excellent. Every park system, whether it's metro parks, the county parks, state parks, they all have that you know you're going into a metro park. When you see the brown with the triangle, you know it's a metro park, right? Oakland County Parks, their logo, you know you're in a county park. I thought that's an excellent comment, and I'd like to see us incorporate that signage. In terms of drainage and you know, water runoff, I interestingly received a letter in the mail from Water Resource Commissioner Jim Nash congratulating me on being reelected, but in the letter, it talked about his willingness to work with us on drainage, stormwater drainage, not just clean water and all of that, and extended a sort of invitation to us to engage him. So I sent that to Andrew, our city manager, today, suggested that he reach out to Kevin at Public Works, and we facilitate a meeting to bring their expertise to the table, whether it's part of this, whether it's part of the community as a whole. But I think we need to engage our Water Resource Commissioner. He represents this community. We all feed into that combined system. So I think where we can make some connections there is important. And then I also like the comment and agree about the benches. You know, whether people want to donate a bench in memorial to a family member or a friend that they you know, have known and want to do that. I think we need a program like that. I know the metro parks have it, and I think it would be great. And you put a little placard on the bench, and it, you know, explains who it's in memory of. And I think that that would be important, and more of a composite material, certainly not wood. The ones in the metro park are wood, and they are deteriorating because of the shade and the lack of sunlight in those areas. So I think a composite material, and then getting residents to do donations in memorial would be amazing. So those are my comments in general. I think you did an excellent job. This is, I was here 5 years ago when the last plan was done, and I can say that, you know, we went from like maybe 2-star to 5-star. So good job. I appreciate that. And so we're moving in the right direction. I just wanted to offer that one amendment to my motion with specifically regarding Val Jones Park. So that's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, so I wanted to second that motion with this comment, and that this is the master plan, right? This is a visionary, like the wish list. When it comes to implementation, I think that there was a comment about feasibility, which is a really important next step. And having that priority list of wish list is what comes out of this. For every park that was in physical space and program that was discussed in this plan, this is like your chart, right? Just the beginning of that engagement. So I know that we have heard from the community on varying viewpoints on Val Jones. So I do feel like that the skate bowl is something that the community has told us that they support and want, and it is an opportunity to re-envision that whole park because it is underutilized. It is got deferred maintenance and lots of issues. Now, what that TBD space would look like, I think that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And that's the implementation plan. So I guess my comment is, this is the framework. The details are to come, and this is a wish list. That doesn't mean that we're going to be able to do everything in the next year or two. I think it's a very aspirational goal. Right, right. But, and, you know, to the comment about environmental sustainability, I recall there was a section on that specifically, and I love what you said about the lens that you're looking through this, and even just the little comments about, you know, planting more trees at Men's Club and permeable surfaces. I would really encourage every single implementation plan to like maximize those opportunities wherever we can. I want to thank Jane and Melissa specifically for the input that you've taken from the community, and I agree with Commissioner Rozelle and the previous plans, not this one, but other plans that we've worked with consultants on. Certain ones have felt very cookie cutter, and this one I think is partially because Jane, you know, used to be a part of Team Huntington Woods, but I felt like this document really reflected the community, and you really took that time and effort to make it specific to us. So this is step one, and I just want, you know, thank you all for showing up, and for, I know a lot of people that also wrote and took your surveys and went to the meetings, and this is the product of the last year, and lots of good input, a lot to work with, and look forward to working with you, but moving in the right direction. Appreciate the initiative.
Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to clarify in response to Mr. Stack's comment that that there was a 30-day comment period, and that the city did communicate out to the residents in the e-blast that they could read the draft of the master plan and make comments, and I appreciated that every single comment was attached there. I saw my own, so I know that clearly you included every comment that members of the public did make on the draft that was put out for public comment. I agree with Commissioner Rozelle and Commissioner Elder about Val Jones as far as making sure that our master plan does not commit us to a full renovation, but rather commits us to being open to change. And so while I would not necessarily say that that the master plan should state that we're going to get rid of any of the amenities there, that I think that it is important to do a more targeted reimagining of what that space could be. And I think that there's you know, if we had the money, all the money in the world, which I think is also an important point when reviewing the master plan, that there's lots of other places that we could put a hockey rink, if that was something that the community really wanted, that would be, far from residents' homes. I did also, on that point, want to state that, as Commissioner Elder said, this is, our dream, right? Our dream and our future state, and that without funding, none of it becomes possible. It was interesting to see that the master plan included a list of grants that we've received over the years, and I feel like the last one was like 20 years ago. And so clearly we've not been the recipients of grant funding, and so I am happy to have Melissa here, and Amy also is our finance director, and hoping that we will have opportunities to have funds to do all of these things that we want to see done in our parks, because right now, it looks great on paper, and it'd be nice to see all of it in the community as well.
And specifically to Val Jones Parks, it seems like there's two different areas in the plan. One talks more about the repair and maintenance of the existing plan, and the other one talks about the feasibility of repurposing the park and possibly redeveloping the whole park. So I think it's in there, we just need to be a little more consistent about our approach, and I, for one, am definitely in favor of studying it, and whether the question be asked, do we repurpose the entire park, or do we use part of it and just repurpose half of it, or do we repair what we have? I mean, let's have the discussion and talk about it. It's obviously a park it's getting close to its end of its useful life, and we need to have this discussion and decide what to do going forward. Which, you said right up front, this is an overall plan. We're not getting in the weeds on any particular park here, but we need to be a little more consistent on Val Jones. So how exactly do you want that reframed? Do you want to see a revised plan come back in January? Does that give you enough time to get it in for your deadline, which was February 1, did you say?
February 1 is like the very last, yes.
We'd be willing to pay for overnight express if necessary.
I'll drive it there.
You drive it to Lansing, but yeah, Mr. Mayor, your point is very well taken, and that's I think what I'm referring to, and that is that it kind of does have two different sort of ways to go, and I do want to restructure it so more it's not a maintenance of what exists that's out. It's a redo, and it's an acknowledgement that the rink element is something that I think is no longer going to be there, and what would be there is a TBD sort of element. So that's, I mean, whether, look, you folks are the professionals. You heard what we said. I trust that you would remove a page or implement something. But if my colleagues are more comfortable having it come back at the January meeting and we can still meet the February deadline, I'm okay with that too. I can go either way. I think that you understand where we're going with this, and based on that, Mr. Mayor, I'm comfortable either way. But my motion is to just modify that element.
I guess this is more of a question for the practitioners. Do you need the commission to approve like a as-is draft, or is that enough direction?
Yeah, you can approve with amendments. I think being as specific about those amendments as possible, if it's removing page 15, because that's what you feel like is incongruous, or, just the highest level of specificity will make sure that we're successful. Otherwise, we can come back in January. I do want to also mention, I believe we need to have approved minutes for the submission, so that does lead into a second meeting. There's some complexity there, so just to be mindful of that.
I always forget about that.
And so there might be a need for a special meeting of this board if the draft were to come back to you in January for approval, because we would need those approved minutes from the subsequent meeting.
How about if we schedule a special meeting of the city commission to both receive a revised version of this and do the interviews for the 100th anniversary committee
Works
in
for me.
early January, and then later in January, we'll be able
Have the
to approve
minutes,
those
yes.
minutes.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
that'd be
fine.
great.
Let's do that. That's why you're the mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
I'm happy to withdraw that motion pending,
Or-
or I can make an alternate
Table it to
motion
the-
or table it, yeah.
Table it to the
What,
special meeting to be set in early January.
do we want to determine a date now, so we're tabling it to a date certain?
If everyone's ready to do that.
Could do that. I can do the 6th and if we're looking at a Tuesday, the 6th and the 13th work for my schedule.
I can do the 6th, I cannot do the 13th.
6th is good.
I can do the 6th.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, Mr. Mayor, I'll modify my original motion and instead introduce a motion to table the approval of the 2026 to 2030 Parks and Recreation Master Plan to a special meeting to be held January 6th, 2026 at 7 o'clock PM.
7 or 7:30?
It's a special meeting. I do 7.
7?
Let's
Good
do
with
7.
everybody? Okay.
Let's do 7. All right, thank you.
Do I need to second that again?
If you would.
Second it.
Thank you.
All those in favor, any
Aye.
other discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Item number 3 is a matter of considering approval of the renewal agreement with the City of Berkeley for the Winter Road Salt Storage and Supply.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve the renewal agreement with the City of Berkeley for winter road salt storage and supply as presented.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is a first reading of an ordinance regarding definitions for structure accessories and adding definitions for landscape features in permanent residential and landscape features in non-permanent residential. Are you talking about this one,
I can
Matt, or-
talk about it.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to all of you. So first of all, I want to make sure that you all had the updated version of the ordinance. The version that was in the packet was the last one that the Planning Commission saw, but did not incorporate the Planning Commission revisions. So the one that came through recently is the correct one. This ordinance has evolved from some issues in enforcing or addressing particularly neighbor issues involving so-called permanent residential landscape features. So we're talking about flower beds that are raised on stilts, gas-fired fire pits, barbecues, etc., where they're placed, particularly if they're excessive in the front yard, if they're placed in a way that's impeding a neighbor's use of their driveway, opening their doors. And there were a couple examples over the course of the past year at a minimum where there really wasn't a place to help us in figuring out how to navigate the placement of these structures because they weren't so-called accessory structures. And this even went through a zoning board interpretation, and I think it was the fire pit that was found not to be an accessory structure. So the issue came to the Planning Commission for review to see if we could find a way to work in some regulations of these types of features that are common in landscapes but aren't accessory structures. And so that's where we came up with the landscape features permanent residential, something that's much more permanent, could potentially be more aesthetically displeasing or intrusive to neighbors. And those are going to be treated more like accessory structures and being incorporated into lot coverage, and then also you'll see there's a number of regulations as to setbacks and size and number of these permanent structures, or permanent landscape features. Then as the Planning Commission was considering the first draft of this ordinance, they said, well, what about non-permanent features that kind of mimic permanent features? What if somebody tries to do an end run? It was not an intent to start regulating statuary and hanging baskets and things like that. We had to work through some of those types of issues that we weren't veering toward over-regulating. But things like, boulders that somebody may place in a way that would affect persons' ingress and egress from their vehicles, and things like that could become more intrusive. That's ended up being the focus of the non-permanent residential regulations that really just focuses on the setback and size issues that especially motivated the permanent feature issue as well.
Okay. So to help me understand, how is this going to be enforced? Because it seems like a lot of these non-permanent structures, or whatever, however you want to call it, just happen. They don't ask for permission.
Correct. Right, well, and that's the thing with the non-permanent, we've kind of eliminated some of the pieces that would really be something that you would control more by way of a permitting scheme. So it's really a matter of if these non-permanent features are within the public right-of-way, within the defined separation distance from a driveway, from a setback. If those are observed, then we would envision that the enforcement would come in, just ask them to be moved in a way that would comply with the setback requirement or whatever other issue was in play.
Okay. So, since this is a first reading, do we need a motion to?
Just to accept it on, or just to accept the first reading of it and then proceed to a second reading.
So can we get a motion to accept the first reading?
I move to accept the first reading of the ordinance.
I'll have a second. I have a question.
I'm going to open it up to the public first, then we'll
Okay.
come back to us. Any public comments?
Sorry, I thought I was done for the night, but this opens up another opportunity. As the site plans come in, I noticed they're very careful about getting the lot coverage in terms of the buildings, the house, and the garage. What I'm not seeing, I think I've seen it once, and I'm sure there may be more, but I'm not seeing the 50% rear lot coverage being spelled out. That percentage should be on the plan of the architect. And I know a fire pit you don't need an architect for, but a lot of these new homes are also putting in some of these features. So I highly suggest that we really enforce that 50% rear yard coverage, not maxing out on it. And also ask Hank, how does he calculate that? Because sometimes in order to make a bigger patio or to put something else in, he says the little strip around the garage and around the back, he can paste this over here, and it all should be tied in with stormwater management. And whether that little strip can really take the gabled roof from that side. So 50% rear lot coverage is what's there.
Any public participation? All right, closing that, back to the commission for comments.
Yeah, Mr. Meyer, so has this been an issue, Matt? Like the non-permanent features? Like
So-
why is there a need for updating this language?
To my knowledge, the non-permanent features have not been so much of the issue as the permanent features. The non-permanent features piece evolved from the conversation at the Planning Commission, and it was inserted between meetings at their request to see what that would look like based on their concerns about people perhaps placing non-permanent structures that would mimic permanent structures, but technically not be a permanent structure. So
this is a theoretical exercise?
It is, it came up, it was an issue. Like,
Yeah,
it has been raised to the city.
Right, I certainly know that with the boulders and certain things that people put along their driveway, that has come up from time to time.
So someone can't open their door because there's a
Exactly.
large boulder alongside their driveway that's placed right on the very edge of the lot line, that's a problem.
And currently, our ordinance would allow for that?
It doesn't address it.
Oh, okay. So
That's,
it's
that's
silent
the
on it.
issue, right,
Okay. So it provides more clarity?
right.
Okay.
And when the administrator, when Mr. Berry tried, pursued it as an accessory structure, the zoning board said, no, these aren't accessory structures and can't be regulated through that ordinance.
So the enforcement would just be a warning or a notice or?
Well, I mean, like any zoning ordinance, it could be enforced like any other violation of the zoning ordinance, but I think it's hard to imagine that it would often escalate to an actual citation. But there would be a notice of violation or a knock at the door, like so often happens when, you're trying to resolve an issue like that without too brutal of force.
No further questions, thank you.
Anyone?
Mr. Mayor, so I was sitting on the planning commission as these items were being discussed, and so what I think that the revised version that was sent out to all of us this afternoon, which is what was meant to be sent to the city commission, removes some of the things that I think would have caused lots of consternation among our residents. And so the non-permanent section, as it is being proposed now, really just restricts that placement in the right-of-way, and then also how far it is from the lot line or driveway. And so there's nothing that speaks to number or size or things that would cause many of our residents to be in violation of the ordinance. So I think that it's nice that it defines it. It's nice that it clarifies how different it is from other types of landscape features. So I think that it gives us a really nice starting point for addressing those.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will have a second reading next month. Item number 5 is another amendment to Chapter 40 regarding front and rear yard, mainly in regard to corner lots. Once again, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one took a little effort to get the language just correct and to get the figures correct, but the bottom line of this ordinance is that it's trying to address the unique problem of people who live corner lots, who have a house that faces, or that's where the house faces the street that isn't the platted front of the house, such that their side yards are technically functionally their front and rear yards. Because we've had fun trying to explain this at the planning commission, but where their side yards are really their front and rear yards. And what happens in that situation is because the zoning ordinance is written for the community as a whole and is assuming normally platted yards, anybody who wants to do something with their backyard that's really a side yard has to come to the zoning board for a variance, because whatever they're trying to do that would normally be allowed in a backyard is not allowed in a side yard. So this, using all the words that it does, gets us to a point where people who are in this situation have some relief. They don't have to go through the time and expense of going to the zoning board to get approval for example, placement of an accessory structure that they could otherwise have without going to the zoning board if they had a normal lot.
Okay. Do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
approve the first reading?
Second.
Any public comment? All right, any comments, questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I just appreciate the fact that we have diagrams in the ordinance, so that was a request from the planning commission because the explanation of technical versus practical was getting really complicated, so I appreciate the addition of the diagrams.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is a matter of appointing and reappointing residents to various boards, commissions, and committees. There are 3 boards that are mayoral appointments, so I'm going to start with my recommendation for those appointments, and hopefully the commission will make a motion to do that. For the Planning Commission, I'd like to see Jill Ingber appointed to a 3-year term, expiring 12/31/28, and Commissioner Jules Olsman to a 1-year term, expiring 12/31/26, and the reappointment of Sarah Gutierrez for a 3-year term, also expiring 12/31/28. And for the Library Board, I'd like to see Angie Hovadis reappointed for a 3-year term, and remind everyone that there are still 2 openings for students on the Library Advisory Board. And for the Historic District Committee, I'd like to see Ed Engman reappointed for a 3-year term, and remind everyone that we still have 1 opening for a position on that board.
I'll move to confirm the mayor's appointments as presented.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have several commission appointments. How do we want to handle that?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to appoint Joe Claya and Adam Tungi to the ZBA, and Chuck Chandler and Robert Horowitz to the Board of Review.
Seconded.
Okay. Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the Environmental and Sustainability Advisory Committee.
Sure, so I move that we reappoint Kimberly Skird to the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee, and to appoint Marzena Grecki and Corey Starr to 3-year terms, and to also, with this...
Student 1 year.
Are we? With that student in agreement? And to also appoint Conrad Walbert to the student term expiring 12/31/2026, a 1-year term.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see. We have,
Parks and Rec.
yeah, Parks and Rec, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint to the Parks and Recreation, am I doing all 3?
Those 3.
Okay. Helene Shaw, Christopher Urbanos, and Emily Berlin. And Dylan Field, student appointment, term expiring for 1 year on December 31st, 2026. And to reappoint Lois Primo? Sorry, I couldn't read that handwriting.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Any public comment? All right, commission comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. ethics and anti-racism. We'll do one of those.
Anti-racism.
Okay.
I'd like to propose to appoint to the anti-racism committee Joyce Crom, and for the student position Julian Grecky.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We need ethics, yeah.
I move to reappoint Melanie Goldberg, Manjula Kaza-Egan, Corey Starr, and Andrew Franklin to the Ethics Committee.
Second.
Any public comment? Commission, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think we have got them all covered. So with that, do we have a city manager's report or?
Okay. Thank you. Andrew wanted me to provide one small update for everybody. I know it's something that's been on everybody's mind and waiting anxiously to be completed. We do have an update on the traffic signal here on 11 and Mortensen, sorry. We're happy to share the installation is complete, but currently the signal and the pedestrian sensors have not been fully activated. As you can see, the street light is either blinking red or yellow. There is some additional work that will need to happen, which is currently we're going to be putting in a temporary crosswalk until the permanent crosswalk can be put in place in the spring. So once that occurs, then we will be able to fully activate the lights, and the sensors will be activated as well. And then there's just some additional signage at that time too that will be put up for everybody, for all the pedestrians and residents. So that was the only item that Andrew wanted me to provide.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission? All right. Commissioner comments? Mayor Pro Tem Snyder.
No comments.
Commissioner Rozell?
No comments.
Commissioner Elder?
No comments.
Mayor Paul, no comments. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
All right, that was
You pick.
Elder Rozell. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.